And when I was young, there was a thing that was banned at school. It's the calculator. So we were not allowed to bring calculators to math class. Sad day for me because I suck at math. And if you were to bring a calculator anytime, you would be told to leave. You would be told that you were going to be going down in your grades. So we had to learn math, long division, long multiplication in our head. It was good for us. It was good for our brain processes to do long division and long multiplication in our heads, because somehow the idea was that it unlocks some sort of logic path that we needed to learn so that we could apply this to other fields. I don't think I have ever used that path. I think those neural networks have dried up maybe 30 years ago. I think they have seen, no, there's dust, there's no math there. So I use a calculator, and the teacher would say, you're not always going to have a calculator with you everywhere you go, but funny enough, I actually have a calculator. It's called my phone. So we are having this conversation again, right? All over again. And I'm old enough to remember that the internet used to be a thing that we didn't have access to, and then we had access to, and in the funny years before the internet changed everybody's lives, we had banned that too. No internet in school. We're banning phones in school. This is actually a good thing, in my opinion. But are we at this point where AI is breaking education? Do we have to go through the same cycle of banning and allowing it to come in? Or is it actually fundamentally not a good thing to have in education because it's literally thinking for the kids? Now, when you are in your working life, because this is, part of the point of education is to prepare you for working life. Part of the goal of education is to become smarter as a human, right? So it's a funny kind of dual goal that education has. Now, if you are training people to think and to use their brains, then AI is probably not a good thing, right? Or some other form of using AI is probably going to have to be in order. If you are also simultaneously preparing students to be effective in the outside world, once they hit that outside world, their learning is not a goal of the outside world. What's the goal of the outside world? Results. So if people are very, very smart and they're able to do things, but they don't get the results that are good, or they don't have the skills that they need to operate in the working world, then it's going to be very, very hard for them to get employed, right? So these are the things that we're going to be talking about tonight. And, education, honestly, it has not had many, many changes in format. We're still kind of talking in front of a class. We're still having lectures like we're doing here. We are still asking students to write things, to write their thesis, write their reports, and having tests that are written. We are still asking for, let's say, non-verbal assessments. So not a ton has changed in the design of the school, but now we're kind of hitting against something that's going to have to change somewhere. We're either going to have very strict laws about using AI in schools, or we're going to have to redesign how we teach and how we assess, because we're hitting up against a bit of a wall. So how many people know about this? Learning pyramid? Okay. Yeah, fantastic. We have so many educators here and very smart people. So the learning pyramid, for those people who are in education design, we have known this for maybe 25, 30 years, I think. And the idea is, how do kids learn? How do kids or students or old people, how do people learn most effectively in such a way that it is retained? Not just cram the night before, take a test, next day, I've forgotten everything, that's kind of normal. But what are the ways that you want to get the highest percentage of things that are learned and retained, right? So what is at the very top of this learning pyramid, where we have the shallowest information, the least embedded information? That's lecture, right? That's what we're doing right now. Sorry. What is after that? Reading, right? Reading. We do a lot of reading in school. Audiovisual, listening to podcasts, watching videos. That's a little bit better, apparently, because it's a media-rich thing that we're throwing at our students. And you connect more when you see moving images and sound together. Then after that, demonstration. So that means you are actually showing a process instead of talking about chemistry. You're actually mixing stuff and creating explosions in your classroom. That's where this bar comes in. People love the explosions. So then a little bit more even than that is when people are engaged in a conversation. That is a much more solid way of learning than the more passive. These are quite passive. Then below that, doing things. How many people have learned things on the job? Perfect. Yeah. Some of the best skills are learned on the job. Right. Those really stick with you because if you don't remember them, job goes away. So you need that. Then getting down towards that nice, broad, deep base is doing stuff. Learning by actually physically being involved, doing the thing that you need to learn. And then the highest level of learning, where you retain the most, you retain it over time the longest, and you have the best short-term recollection of the facts, is by teaching other people. How many people are teachers here? Okay, great. How many people agree with the fact that if you teach something, you really know it? He's raising his hands. He hasn't even heard this. Okay, so we really are strongly agreeing with that. Okay, good. Now, here's the thing. What are we actually doing in our educational processes? We are kind of focusing on these very shallow learning methods up here, which if you really are a purist and you say, I want to teach in a way that kids learn the best, then maybe what we need to be doing is looking more towards the kind of the bottom half of this pyramid. Like maybe this is an opportunity for us as educators to move towards these methods where we know that the information will sink in better. And it's great for us teachers because they can teach and I can just watch. Isn't that nice? I don't have to stand here and teach all the time. I can let the kids do my work for me. Great. I still have to grade the papers, but hey, that's what AI is for, right? I didn't say that. All right. Anyway, so we are going to be talking about some really fascinating topics today. We are not going to obviously change the world here tonight, but what do we do? Are we banning AI? Are we assuming that everybody's using AI? And do we adapt our lesson plans? Do we have to change our goals? Do we have to look at different things that we want our kids or our students to leave our classrooms, either skills or actual learning nuggets? Or do we have to change how we assess our quizzes, our tests? Do we need to flip things on our heads, right? So these are the questions we're going to be asking tonight. This is something that I'm looking at it from the outside world, and I work with a lot of leaders out in corporate spaces, and they are telling me that they have a very hard time hiring recent graduates because they don't have the AI skills. What's really interesting about this generation is that for the first time, they are lower tech than the older people. So like the old people are like, we are actually more AI literate because we're using the tools every day in our work than the students who are emerging from university. So they have to do a lot of on-the-job learning. But this is an actual becoming kind of a problem. The other train that is heading for this kind of train wreck is that AI is taking a lot of these entry-level jobs. For the first time, we had about a 14% decrease in the number of entry-level jobs for people leaving school. So what happens? Train number one, lower AI skills. Train number two, heading for the collision, lower number of jobs out there. There's a third train coming, and that's this train. Our students are not in a vacuum. Our students are competing with students all over the world. How are they doing in China? 100% AI literacy. That's what they decided less than a year ago. Now, this is a country that decided this a few decades ago. We are going to be the country that has 100% literacy, just full stop literacy. And every village, every town, everybody is going to learn how to read and write. 100% literacy. Huge goal. It's a moonshot. And at the same time, Chinese is probably one of the most complicated languages in the world. I think it is the most complicated language in the world. No matter, we're going to do it. And by golly, they did it. So when they say we are going to make 100% AI literacy, personally, I believe it. So we have 3 trains coming at a collision, right? Lack of AI literacy skills for our students, lack of good jobs for first-time kids coming out, and we have worldwide global competition because a lot of these jobs are not necessarily live. So this is the world that's happening outside of the schools going on. And this is the world that our kids are going to be entering. There's something else that we have to do. Oh, this is, we have a bug in the system here. Let's see. We're just going to catch our breath here for a moment. Okay. This is actually good review, good revision, buddy. I'm going to be testing you this in the morning. All right, here we go. And right, and we got this, okay, got that. And we were, everybody remember what's coming next, big photo? All right. And so you remember the mine now. Oh, yes, okay. So another issue that we have, by the way, it's going to be mandated. So we've had the EU AI Act for about 2 years now. And what does this say? Well, a lot. It's many pages. But what's important here in this room is that the responsibility for AI literacy is in the institution, not the individual. What does this mean in the corporate space? It means that the boss, the leaders of an organization, are responsible for the AI literacy of the employee. What does this mean for a learning education institution? Probably similar things. The institution is responsible for the literacy of the teachers, right? Does that mean that the teachers have a responsibility towards the students? It has not been explicitly stated. But the fact that the responsibility is being put on the institution for this law is interesting. It's an interesting choice, but that's like train number 4 that is leading the station that we have to be aware of. So this is another open question. You will probably not solve this tonight, but what do we do about AI literacy in the modern world, in the world that these students are going to be entering coming up? Do we have a responsibility or not? All right, we're going to try an experiment. Everybody who has used some form of AI today, please stand up. Use some form of AI today, please stand up. Okay. Very good. Today, okay, very good. Okay, for all those people sitting down, keep standing up. All those people sitting down, you have used it if you've left your house at all today, you use it, but you just haven't. It's okay. I'm talking about actual explicit use of AI. Wonderful. Now, sit down if you have not used it and passed it off as your own work. So if you have used AI and you have, let's say, sent an email with a little bit of AI in there, and you didn't disclose that to the person who's receiving the email, right? Just remain standing. Okay? So all of you who are standing up have used AI and have not necessarily told someone about it. Okay? So everybody who's standing now has sent an email with a little bit of AI, and you didn't mention this is bit little AI, 50% AI. Okay? A lot of us stay standing. All right, thank you so much. You can sit down. Now, I'm also standing, right, because a lot of what I'm saying and what I'm hearing today is partially AI. So the expectation that we have on our students, I think that we're definitely more than half the people who are standing at that last one. The expectation that we have on our students is that they sit down first. We adults, we non-students, let's say we're standing up and we're passing work off as our own. And we're using AI in our daily life without even thinking about it. We don't put the disclosure down on the email. Oh, by the way, Mom, I used AI a little bit for this Adobe map, But we're just going ahead and doing it, aren't we? When we're doing our research, we're using AI. But the expectation on our students is that they don't do this, right? So are we just setting the example for our kids, or do we need to adjust our expectations? So thank you for helping with this experiment. We're going to talk a little bit about the present, hopefully also a little bit about the future, and we're going to see if we come up with some groundbreaking ideas.